The morning sun filtered through the blinds of my small apartment, casting golden stripes across the hardwood floor where Max, my golden retriever service dog, lay sprawled out, his tail thumping lazily. Max wasn't just a pet, he was my lifeline. After a car accident 3 years ago left me with severe anxiety and occasional seizures, Max had been trained to sense my episodes before they hit, nudging me to sit down or fetching my medication. His calm brown eyes and steady presence were my anchor in a world that often felt like it was spinning out of control. But that morning, as I sipped my coffee and scratched Max behind the ears, I had no idea we were about to face a battle that would test both of us. It started with a letter slipped under my door. The crisp white envelope bore the logo of the Pinewood apartment complex, my home for the past year. I tore it open, expecting a routine notice about maintenance or rent. Instead, my eyes scanned words that made my stomach drop. Dear Mesai Yesha Khan, it has come to our attention that you are keeping a dog in your apartment in violation of our no pets policy. Please remove the animal within 48 hours or you will face eviction proceedings. Sincerely, Margaret Hensley, property manager. Asterisk. I read it twice, my hands trembling. No pets. Max wasn't a pet, he was a service dog, registered, trained, and legally protected under the Americans with Disabilities Act. I'd submitted all his documentation when I moved in, his certification, vet records, even a letter from my doctor explaining my condition. How could they do this? I grabbed my phone and dialed the management office. Margaret answered, her voice clipped and cold. Mace, Khan, the policy is clear. No dogs allowed, no exceptions. But Max is a service dog, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I sent you all the paperwork. He's not a pet, he's medically necessary. There was a pause, then a sigh. We've had complaints. Other tenants say the dog barks and makes messes. I'm sorry, but you'll need to find another solution. Complaints. I was stunned. Max was the quietest dog I'd ever known, trained to be unobtrusive. He didn't bark unless he was alerting me to a seizure. This is a mistake. Can we meet to discuss this? Margaret agreed to a meeting that afternoon, but her tone made it clear she wasn't budging. I hung up, my heart racing. Max sensed my distress and pressed his nose against my hand, his warm eyes steady. We're not giving up, buddy, I whispered. The meeting at the management office was a disaster. Margaret, a middle-aged woman with a tight bun and a tighter smile, sat across from me, flanked by a man in a cheap suit who introduced himself as Mr. Carver, the complex's lawyer. Max sat calmly by my side, his service vest pristine, his demeanor impeccable. I laid out my case, the ADA, Max's training, the paperwork I'd provided. I even showed them a video on my phone of Max alerting me during a minor anxiety episode last month, nudging me to a chair before I could faint. But Margaret barely glanced at it. MS. Khan, she said, we've had multiple complaints about noise and disturbances. Our policy is designed to ensure a peaceful environment for all tenants. Who complained? I asked, my voice rising. Max doesn't bark. He's trained not to. Can you tell me who's saying this? Mr. Carver leaned forward. That's confidential, but we have statements from several tenants. Unless you can prove this dog is absolutely necessary, we'll have to enforce the policy. I felt a surge of anger. Prove it. I've given you everything. This is discrimination, and it's illegal. The meeting ended with a curt promise to review the matter, but I knew they were stalling. As I walked back to my apartment, Max trotting beside me, I felt a knot of dread. Eviction would mean losing my home, my stability, everything I'd worked so hard to rebuild after the accident. That night, I couldn't sleep. The thought of losing Max or being forced to move was unbearable. I started researching my rights, scrolling through legal websites and forums for people with service animals. The law was on my side, but I knew fighting a property management company with a lawyer on retainer wouldn't be easy. I needed a plan. The next morning, I decided to take matters into my own hands. If they were claiming complaints, I'd find out who was behind them. I started knocking on doors in my building, introducing myself and Max to my neighbors. Most were friendly, petting Max and asking about his training. A few even said they loved seeing him in the hallways. He made them feel safer. But then I knocked on Mrs. Delaney's door. She was an older woman on the 3rd floor, known for her sharp tongue and constant complaints about everything from loud music to kids playing in the courtyard. When she opened the door, her eyes narrowed at Max. Oh, it's you asterisk, she said, her voice dripping with disdain. That dog of yours is a nuisance, barking at all hours, leaving fur everywhere. I was floored. Mrs. Delaney, Max doesn't bark unless he's alerting me. And I clean up after him every day. Can you tell me when you heard him barking? She crossed her arms. I don't have to explain myself. I've already told management what I think. It clicked then. Mrs. Delaney was the source of the complaints, or at least one of them. But why? Max had never bothered her. I decided to dig deeper. Over the next few days, I gathered support. I contacted a local disability rights organization who connected me with a lawyer named Sarah who specialized in service animal cases. Sarah was a fireball, promising to send a strongly worded letter to Pinewood's management citing out of violations. I also started a petition among the tenants explaining Max's role and asking for their support. To my surprise, dozens signed, including some who'd never met me but believed in the cause. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source, Jake, a maintenance worker at the complex. I ran into him while walking Max and he asked how things were going. When I told him about the eviction threat, he frowned. That's weird, he said. I've never seen Max cause trouble, but you know, Mrs. Delaney's been cozying up to Margaret lately. I heard her talking about wanting to get her nephew's dog into the complex, even though pets aren't allowed. Maybe she's trying to clear the way. It was a bombshell. Mrs. Delaney wasn't just annoyed, she had an agenda. If she could get Max banned, she might convince Margaret to bend the rules for her nephew. It was a long shot, but I needed proof. With Sarah's help, I filed a formal complaint with the Department of Housing and Urban Development, alleging disability discrimination. Meanwhile, I kept digging. I asked Jake to keep an ear out, and he came through a few days later with a recording. Nothing fancy, just a voice memo from his phone. It was Margaret and Mrs. Delaney chatting in the management office. Mrs. Delaney was complaining about Max, exaggerating wildly about constant barking and aggressive behavior. Then she said, "If you can get rid of that dog, Margaret, I'll make sure my nephew's a model tenant. His little terrier's no trouble at all." It was all I needed. Sarah sent the recording to Mr. Carver, along with a letter threatening a lawsuit if the eviction notice wasn't rescinded. She also included statements from 20 tenants who vouched for Max's good behavior and a copy of my petition, now with 50 signatures. The response was swift. Within 24 hours, I got a new letter from Margaret, this time apologizing for the misunderstanding. The eviction notice was withdrawn, and Max was explicitly recognized as a service animal under the ADA. Mrs. Delaney, I later heard, was given a warning about making false complaints. The victory felt sweet, but it wasn't just about keeping Max. It was about standing up for what was right, for the bond that had carried me through my darkest days. That evening, I took Max for a long walk in the park near our complex. As he bounded through the grass, chasing a butterfly, I felt a weight lift. We'd fought, and we'd won, but the real win came a week later, when I saw Mrs. Delaney in the hallway. She avoided my eyes, but Max, ever the gentleman, wagged his tail as we passed. I couldn't help but smile. They tried to ban my service dog, and it was a big mistake.